Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, my co-host is Lindsay Knox, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Advocacy for McDonald, Carano, Jesse Wadhams, and the star of our show, legendary lobbyist Jim Wadhams. You're here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain, moving 95% of our freight in the Silver State. And while essential, the road isn't always smooth. Supply chain disruptions, rising fuel costs, and unrealistic rules and laws that hamper our ability to serve our customers and country. Our prosperity and every sector of the economy, manufacturing, mining, medicine, and food from farm to table, is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City, from the home of the Nevada Builders Alliance, with co-host for the first time, Lindsay Knox, who is Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Advocacy for McDonald, Carano, Jesse Wadhams, partner with Black & Wadhams, attorneys at law, and Jim Wadhams, who is a partner also with Black & Wadhams, attorney at law. You are the featured act here today, sir.
Well, my goodness, that puts the pressure on, Sam.
Not really. But Lindsay and I were talking about what would make a great show, and we decided that having both Wadhams on the program would make for an excellent program. Why did you think that, Lindsay?
Because Jim's legendary in the building, and if you want to learn something, you go to Jim, because his historic knowledge is immense. And Jesse has, since I started, has turned into a top-notch lobbyist, and I've got to watch that for so many years, and I just love working with both of them.
So, Jim, when did you first start at the legislature?
Well, my first full session in the Nevada legislature was in 1877. I actually arrived in Nevada in the fall of 1975, but the 75 session had already concluded. So 77 was my first session, and I was working then for the state. So I was essentially a lobbyist for the state Department of Insurance, and served in that role. Then was appointed by Governor O'Callaghan to be his insurance commissioner. Served in that role, and Governor List, who followed Governor O'Callaghan, appointed me to be the director of the Department of Commerce, which is now Business and Industry. And so in those state agency roles, I spent a lot of time working with the legislature.
All right, so when you think back to those early days, who were the legends in the legislature?
Oh, Carl Dodge, Bob Barango was around, Roger Bremner, Jim Gibson, the late Jim Gibson, not the county
father.
commissioner. Floyd Lamb, Bill Raggio, Joe Dini, Joe Neal were all there when I started. Those gentlemen started in about the early 73 election, 72 election, I think. So I had an opportunity to work with some really serious Nevada-oriented legislators. It was an eye-opening experience.
Lindsay?
No, wait, I have some names I don't know.
But you know what's interesting, you know, from a historical perspective, Floyd Lamb was quite the character.
Floyd Lamb came from a family down in Lincoln County, and there were three of them. One of them became actually there was a television series about Sheriff Ralph Lamb.
Yes.
For a while, but they were part of the early days in Nevada. Had come out here, and all three of them had become politically active. Unfortunately, later in Floyd Lamb's career, there was a FBI sting,
Abscam,
that caught several legislators and a couple of county commissioners, and that basically ended their political careers.
So when you first started, the mafia was still in play.
Well, that's what they say, yes. Although a gentleman
You sound like Oscar Goodman.
I was just going to say he's been a friend. I mean, we're not close friends, but somebody that we have known each other since my early days. And as he said, there is no mafia. I don't know what you're talking about. But of course, he had the presence of mind to form what's now a big tourist attraction in Las Vegas called the Mob Museum. But so and there were characters around the bombing at Tony Roma's of Lefty Rosenthal's car, and so the Hole in the Wall gang, all of that was taking place in those years in the 70s.
And how did that play into the legislature?
Well,
did they make demand? I mean, for example, was there an undercurrent of things that the mob wanted accomplished at the legislature or would try to? Was there influence there?
No, well, I could have been too new to the state and too young and naive to have seen it, but I didn't sense that was in play. Politics did not seem to be where they needed to be active, and so I think the legislature almost seemed to be nonpartisan, although it was almost overwhelmingly controlled by the Democrats. And there were very few Republicans in the legislature. Bill Washoe, Carl Dodge, Cliff Young. There was three senators. All the rest of them were Democrats. And similarly, in the Assembly, maybe a half a dozen Republicans. So it was an interesting time, but we didn't have the separation of the caucuses, so to speak.
That's very interesting because, you know, one would have thought that Nevada would have been much more conservative at that point in time, with so much rural land and Las Vegas and Reno both being relatively small.
For reasons that predated me, because I asked a similar question. I had originally come from the state of Nebraska, a fairly conservative state, and I was somewhat amazed that the Democrats had the numerical majority, and I was told that that's the party you had to be in if you wanted to get elected, because the Republican Party of that era seemed to have no organization or legs. So the comment you made, I think, is really reflective of Nevada. It was a very, very conservative state. The state had just changed from one senator per county to the proportionate Senate elections that we now think we've had forever. But we had a substantial rural representation here, and many of the legislators were of the LDS faith and very conservative, and so our politics were very conservative when I got here, very conservative.
And one of the things that I found very interesting over time was that Harry Reid and Dick Bryan were both considered conservative Democrats because that was the only way they could get elected. Am I right about that?
That's absolutely right. And to a certain extent, when they served in the legislature, they were nicknamed, I think it was their freshman year or their sophomore year, the Gold Dust Twins, which might have been 73 or 75 before I got here, but that moniker still held. I think the late Senator Reed was lieutenant governor in the mid 70s, and Senator Bryan was a state senator at this point in time, later to become governor, of course. But they fit into that mold right in the middle of the Nevada legislature of being fairly, I guess we'd say moderate, but it seemed more conservative than moderate.
And we'll be right back.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
Fantastic cocktails and delicious food. It's a good time to eat. Over 500 hot slots, plus electronic table games.
It's a good time to play.
Player rewards and big-time jackpots.
It's a good time to win.
Your good times are Tamarack.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers with Jim and Jesse Wadhams and Lindsay Knox. Lindsay, when did you first come across Jim Wadhams?
That would have been 2009 was the first time.
You youngin'.
Yes, that I saw Jim and Jesse both in the building.
Okay, and what struck you about Jim?
He just knows so much about everything, whether it's work comp, different types of insurance, healthcare. He knew home building. He had the home builders before McDonald Carano did. So he's just always been kind of that wealth of knowledge that he will pull me aside and be like, Lindsay, this has happened. Here's the history of this. You need to look at it this way. And he just makes you look at a different picture.
So that brings up an interesting point, which is institutional knowledge is so important, and yet term limits have done so much to destroy that amongst the legislative body itself. Would you agree on that?
I think it really has, and there's been a couple of interesting migrations in that sphere, because the legislators have become shorter in duration, that is the term limits. If you think back to that period of time, legislators that served 15 to 20 years were fairly common. A legislator really had to serve at least 3 sessions before they were even considered potential for being a committee chair. As we now know, we put freshmen in those positions because the half-life, if you will, of a legislator is probably 4 or 5 sessions. And when I started, these legislators that I was dealing with as a younger person in the state, they were 18, 22, almost 30-year legislators. They had long-time commitments, and it allowed that knowledge to be there. Those legislators remembered what was done 4 or 5 sessions ago, which would be 10 to 15 years. And to a certain extent, more bills were processed or rejected, and the legislature ended much earlier because of that institutional knowledge. And I think it's fair to say that with so many new legislators, we have almost a quarter to a third new legislators every session now. That education process of the breadth of what they're going to be looking at is a significant challenge.
All right, so Jesse, growing up, most kids rebel against their parents. And you found yourself enamored by what your dad was doing. How did that come about?
Those are not quite the terms I would have put on that. And I guess I'll
This
start.
is a classy show.
Right, fair enough. But I first came across Jim Wadhams in 1974 for various reasons. Anyway, I think, in all honesty, like probably most kids, I did in fact want to rebel and never thought about following this career path. It was a little bit more of a twisted and turning path around, because I really did not intend, once I got to California, that I was coming back. And, for whatever reason, ended up going from California to DC and working in Nevada, in a Nevada office back in DC. And I think that's when I said, oh, you know what? There's a chance to come back and do something interesting. And then I ended up working for Brian Sandoval as Deputy Attorney General. And then one thing did, in fact, lead to another. The magnetism of Jim, I suppose it is, that did bring me into this. And what it is it's interesting, right? As you talk to him, you get to hear something about everything. And I think that is what has been attractive to the job, is you get to be a part of a lot of things. So I think that's how I got it.
You're nodding.
Well, because I completely agree, but I also have seen his knowledge reflect on him. And when I need something, I know I can go to Jesse just as well as I can go to Jim.
It's really fascinating because of term limits and things have changed so much, that it is so important that we have knowledgeable lobbyists who are able to guide the new legislators. And it seems to me, in my conversations over this last 23 years, that the best lobbyists are ones that present both sides of an argument, that they don't just present their side, but they do a Tim Russett, give both sides, and then promote, obviously, their own side. But is that the sign of a good lobbyist, Jim?
Well, I'm not sure that that's the side of a good lobbyist, but I found that to be very effective, that the opportunity to educate the legislator is the most important about the issue. Generally, when legislators begin to understand the issue in their level of common sense, they can begin to see what are the pluses and minuses. They may have heard the notion of a bill and decide, oh, I like that or I don't like that. But then when you can explain to them what the effects are, what the implications, what the outcomes can be, then they can begin to understand that this is a bigger issue. They need to get all the information. And I found it always helpful to let them know, you probably should talk to these other people, and that may not be just the other side. Many bills have 2 or 3 different perspectives to it. And if that legislator then knows that there are other people they ought to talk to, frankly, they end up appreciating that because they have better knowledge. And if they make a decision, whether it's my way or not, at least they know the consequences of those decisions. And I found that to be helpful to being able to explain what my client's interest is. But it's also helpful in bringing the legislator to a better understanding of what the issue is.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We're centering on Jim Wadhams here, but we also have Lindsay Knox and Jesse Wadhams along with us, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, Our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Carson Valley Inn, it's your place for the good times. Carson Valley Inn.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Jim Wadhams, Jesse Wadhams, and Lindsay Knox. Jim, I remember the first time I really got to know you was on a plane flight. I don't know if you remember this, from Las Vegas to Reno. We were sitting next to each other. And I talked to a lot of lobbyists who did not look forward to legislative sessions. And I kind of brought this up to you, and you looked at me and said, I love legislative sessions. And we spent almost an hour talking about it. You really do enjoy this biennial move. You don't look at it as a burden.
No, I do, and it's as I said to you on that flight, and I think it was otherwise a fairly uneventful flight. We didn't have any turbulence.
No,
so,
only in the conversation.
Only in the conversation, but I do. This is an important part of our system of government, and it's always a challenge because there are so many issues that have to be decided, and a lot more today than there were when I started back in the 70s. And what makes it exciting is that there's opportunity here to improve the state. And it's never all one way or another, but at the end of the session, the legislators have to find a path forward because we have a constitutional requirement that they end on a certain day. So they've got to come to some resolution, and we talk about that. But I think that's what makes it fun. And it's an opportunity. It's not an opportunity to teach, it's an opportunity to learn. Every time I come up here, it's an opportunity to see an issue from a new perspective because new people have moved into the state, new legislators have been elected, and they bring their perspectives, and so you've got to deal with that. So I found that fun and challenging, and so. But
that's how you stay young. I mean, the minute you say that you know it all and you don't need to learn anymore, it's over. So I think that the idea that one is constantly learning, I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something, and it's wonderful because I didn't go to school. So life has been something that I've learned from. Go ahead.
See, I feel like this has actually aged me. But as we continue to grow, and Jim and Jesse too, for as many years as we all have been doing this now, do you think we are getting closer to having a yearly session?
Actually, there's a couple of comments I'd make on that. In some respects, we virtually have a yearly session because the whole concept of the interim legislative process has become more robust. There are adjustments that have to be made. I was not around, but our Constitution was amended to create annual sessions in about the period of time I think that Paul Laxalt was governor. So that's like in the 60s, and the people went and voted that back to biennial sessions. right after that. So do we have a different electorate today than we did 60, 70 years ago? Maybe, but I think the legislature has figured out how to make the adjustments between the annual sessions. So I'm not sure politically our people are ready to vote for annual sessions.
Jesse, you want to jump in here?
Oh, on the annual sessions? I mean, I think the state now that we're at 2.5, 3 million people, something like maybe 3.5 even. I think the business of the legislature probably could stand to be done annually. I am not a proponent of full-time legislature, but I do think a kind of an annual session, maybe a budget session, because again, you're trying to do a 2-year budget, project it out, that's a little tough to do. So I do think that the process could be helped a bit by a little bit more time working on it, but also a little less time pressure, if you will, because so much of our legislature now, maybe it's just that human nature. We all like to do things at the last minute, so we crowd everything into May now.
Well, it's also the negotiation process.
Fair enough. So I do think it probably would behoove us to think about adding a little bit more days on the calendar.
All right, well, that's where we have to leave it. Thank you all so much for doing this, and thank you for suggesting this, Lindsay. And Jim, thank you for being back on the program. We appreciate you being here.
Always good to be on your show, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. And we'll be right back.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Carson Valley Inn, it's your place for the good times. Carson Valley Inn.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City, from the headquarters of the Nevada Builders Alliance. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching.